You probably already know about the Tesla, and you probably already know about 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who was found in the front trunk of that Tesla registered to rising musician David. But what we didn't know for the last 7 months while David was walking around free was the detailed timeline that prosecutors now claim led to that murder and the body being discovered.
You talked about a chainsaw months ago. You talked about finding a chainsaw months ago.
And according to a gruesome new 9-page evidence brief, the timeline of Celeste's life, death, and decay is more disturbing than anyone could have imagined.
They met when she was just 11 years old. Prosecutors actually say they have photos, text messages that talk about the relationship of Plan B.
Prosecutors are now claiming that the murder of Celeste was followed almost immediately by a calculated cover-up that kicked into action just minutes after she was murdered.
This is a key month. We start April 22nd, 2025. David and Celeste apparently fight. This is after what the brief says that Celeste and David had taken trips to Vegas and Texas and London. And during this alleged fight, Celeste had threatened to disclose damaging information about David.
But this was a cover-up that wouldn't stay covered up for long because David would be tracked, leaving a trail evidence through Uber records.
He orders an Uber to her house the next day. She takes that Uber from her house to his house, and investigators say that that night her phone goes blank. There's no activity. Yes.
Wow.
iCloud messages and files, Tesla GPS data, Amazon orders to his own home, along with deliveries from Postmates.
They also say they have a lot of his Amazon purchases, which were made under another name, but were delivered to his home. Among those purchases are a chainsaw, an inflatable pool,
as well as forensic blood evidence and the autopsy itself.
There's multiple cuts into the tube top. What do these things mean? You can almost develop a picture in your mind of somebody being cut multiple times or scraped and then stabbed fatally.
But once this information came out, in some ways, the case became even harder to explain.
They say he stabbed her to death, and he actually waited, according to this complaint, until she quote-unquote bled out.
Prosecutors say that their evidence is so comprehensive, it includes chainsaws that were used to cut up the body, a blue inflatable kiddie pool that was used to try and catch the blood, a body bag, shovel, and burn cage, all ordered under fake names on Amazon to David's home.
A lot of people are shocked that you can basically order a kill kit to your home through Amazon.
Items such as a body bag, 2 chainsaws, a burn cage, and a blue inflatable pool, all delivered to singer David's home after he allegedly murdered a 14-year-old girl.
Not to mention the Tesla that was left sitting in the California heat while David went on tour, and since all this evidence has come out, now the question has shifted from how on earth did David do this to how on earth did he think he was getting away with it. So in this video, we'll be breaking down the full timeline that prosecutors say that they can now prove from the moment that Celeste met David online, right up to the moment where Celeste's phone went silent, all the way to the months-long cover-up that investigators believe that David put on to cover up a trail of evidence that led all the way from Celeste's home in Lake Elsinore, his home in the Hollywood Hills.
And with that, chainsaw has teeth on it. It's not teeth like a regular handsaw. This is going to sling actual tissue everywhere. And so the idea that this could be cleaned up completely, there's no way.
And a remote area of Santa Barbara County where David allegedly tried to dump evidence.
Traveled to Santa Barbara and kept on calling, texting her, saying, "Where are you? Where are you?" He goes to Santa Barbara, and that's where, according to the complaint, investigators actually found her ID.
But unfortunately for him, no matter how smart he thought he was never going to get away with this. Content warning. This video is about a sensitive topic involving violence, assault, and loss of life. We've removed any graphic or descriptive content to comply with YouTube's guidelines. The aim of this video is to provide informative, factual journalism on tragic events in the public interest that does not dismiss its seriousness. All clips shown are under the doctrine of fair use for news reporting and analysis, and some points made in this video are simply opinions and theories. I'm not responsible for third-party information, and this video is being made purely for artistic, educational, documentary, and scientific purposes. If you want to watch my videos uncut and extended, go to patreon.com/traplawross, where you can get those for just $2. Also, you can now watch my new drops on Spotify, so go search me there. Here's the video. For weeks, David's legal team would demand that the evidence against him be made public.
We believe the actual evidence will show David Burke did not murder Celeste, and we would like to be able to had the evidence come into the light of day at the earliest opportunity.
Leading the charge for this disclosure was his attorney, Blair Burke, a high-powered LA lawyer known in the city for being a Hollywood fixer. Years earlier, Blair drew backlash for saying that she was proud as a feminist to represent Harvey Weinstein. But in David's case, her plan was simple: force prosecutors to reveal their evidence early before they had time to prepare, so that they could find the holes and argue that the case was too weak to even go to trial. But Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman, a veteran prosecutor nicknamed the Sniper for rarely losing murder cases, called their bluff in dramatic fashion. She would tell David's team that she would give them everything they asked for.
We'll be very happy to put on the evidence that we've collected in this case over the last several months.
And then, when Silverman filed the state's 9-page evidence brief on April the 29th, 2026, David's legal team were in shock, making a sudden U-turn and suddenly fighting to keep the evidence out of the public eye. But once the document became public, their frantic attempts to cover it up suddenly made a whole lot of sense, because inside that filing was a full reconstruction of Celeste's final hours, built from phone records, Uber logs, Tesla GPS data, purchase receipts, forensic evidence, and autopsy findings. A mountain of evidence that would track David's every move from before the murder to long after the alleged cover-up. The state's evidence and their comprehensive timeline would pinpoint a very specific day and time, April the 23rd, 2025, the day they claim that Celeste's phone activity abruptly stopped because she was killed. But prosecutors say that the motive for the murder actually started the night before, because they claim in messages recovered from David's iCloud account that Celeste actually confronted him about the false promises he'd made her about their future relationship, apparently while he was seeing other people. Celeste was allegedly furious at being lied to, and in retaliation, she threatened to expose David's illegal relationship with to ruin his career. To prosecutors, they believe that this threat became the very motive for David to commit murder, because around this same time, David's career was reaching its biggest moment yet. His debut album, Withered, was only 72 hours away from release, with major endorsements and brand deals already in place, and a world tour that his entire career had been building up to. And suddenly, it was all on the line. So the next morning on April 23rd, while still publicly promoting his music career that Celeste had just threatened to destroy, David would make promotional posts teasing tickets for his world tour as recorded on Discord logs the very morning of the crime. Then, later in the evening, just hours before the alleged murder took place, David was reportedly communicating with his team and posting more promotional content teasing his album. At 8:40 p.m, David would book an Uber to collect Celeste from her home in Lake Elsinore for a nearly 2-hour drive to his Beverly Hills home. For the next 90+ minutes, phone records suggested that David and Celeste had actually messaged the entire journey. By 10:10 p.m, Celeste had arrived at David's home, and barely 20 minutes later after Celeste arrived, David would allegedly begin texting her, asking where she was, as if she had never made it to his house. This contradiction stood out to prosecutors immediately, because the alleged records actually showed Celeste had been messaging him all the way to the destination, and according to investigators, those texts before she arrived were not messages of concern. Instead, they were the first pieces of a cover story. In fact, as per the filing, soon after Celeste arrived at David's home at 10:10 p.m, prosecutors would claim that David attacked her with a sharp instrument, likely a knife. According to the autopsy, the attack left 2 wounds that caused catastrophic injuries.
One of the things I was thinking that we were going to see was probably a frenzied attack. And you and I have covered enough cases to know that frenzied means you've got multiple stab wounds. Jesse, what we're looking at here are 2 stab wounds that they have made note of in this autopsy report.
One blade fractured her ribs as it entered her chest.
Is to the left chest, so here, left chest, and it is penetrating what they're saying, the underlying intercostal space, which is actually, if you think about the muscles in between your ribs, that's the intercostal muscles. That's what they're talking about. So it's not necessarily passing through the bone of the rib itself.
While another tore into her liver, a wound that medical experts determined was most likely the fatal one.
We've got one in the right abdomen, and it goes directly into the liver, which in and of itself can in fact be fatal. All right, the liver is one of the most vascular organs in the body. So if you don't attend to this, to an injury directly to the liver, you're gonna bleed out, and you're gonna bleed out probably internally, all right?
But even then, the most disturbing detail was not just the attack itself, because according to the filing, David never called 911 or tried to help, instead allegedly standing by as Celeste bled out. By 11:30 p.m, roughly an hour later, location logs would show that David left his home while continuing to call and text Celeste's phone, asking her whereabouts. From there, Tesla GPS data and phone pings tracked him north on the 101 freeway towards an isolated area in Santa Barbara County, about 2 hours away away from his home. Prosecutors believe that that drive was a mission to dump some of Celeste's personal property and destroy evidence. But while prosecutors say that David was on the road trying to dump evidence, members of his Discord server were already sharing DMs begging him to come back online. By the morning of April the 24th, David had returned home and stepped back into public life. According to the prosecution's timeline, his next stop was a radio interview to discuss the upcoming release of Withered. In that interview, David noticeably sounded more reserved than usual.
The making of this album was kind of crazy too. I mean, but the most recent version, the one that I'm very happy with, the one that we're gonna put out, I made in a total of 4 weeks. So I went to London for 2 weeks with 3 of my friends, and we just made a song every day for 2 weeks in London.
Compared to interviews from just a week earlier.
What does it mean to be withered?
So the entire aesthetic of this project is returning to the dust. A rose grows from the dirt and then it also decays back into the dirt. So with this project, the way I made it, the way I'm talking about the themes on this project, the way I'm talking about my emotions and my feelings, it's all returning to the dirt with this. It's like a entire life cycle.
During that same day, he apparently sent 2 more check-in texts to Celeste's phone, but those messages could only go unanswered. And then the evidence trail moved into an even more disturbing phase. Later, it would be reported that David had actually gone live on Twitch around 4:30 p.m., just 18 hours after the alleged murder, promoting his upcoming album whilst playing Fortnite, which is chillingly the very game he was playing when he first met Celeste.
My bundle real quick though. I need to buy my own bundle. Let me buy my bundle. Oh, I got a post that I'm streaming too. Oopsie daisies, twin. Oopsie daisies, twin. Who got the bundle though? Who pre-saved the album though? The album come out in 4 hours. Who pre-saved that? Who did that? Who did these? Bro, I just want to say big shout out to Fortnite, bro, for giving me the locker bundle. I've been waiting for this for so long, bro. Whoa. You guys don't understand. When I was playing this game, been playing this game since 2018. Thank you. When we get the skin, it's gonna be a monumentous moment. A monumented moment. Yes. I'm so hyped, bro. I don't know what any of your plan was, bro, Diggy, but you're not him. I swear not him, bro. What was that, twin? Chat.
But even more creepy, it would appear that in between Twitch sessions, that very same day, the day after the alleged murder, and the Santa Barbara County drive, financial records would show that David actually ordered a shovel from Home Depot, and according to the filing, that shovel was delivered to his own home through delivery app Postmates under a fake name, Victoria Mendez. Private investigator Steve Fisher would later post photos of mail outside David's home with the very same name, Victoria Mendez, on the packages. And online, the name Victoria Mendez only raised more questions, with some theorizing that it belonged to one of Celeste's friends, or to a fake ID allegedly connected to her. After April 26, 2025, just 3 days after Celeste's death, David never attempted to contact Celeste again. But even more disturbing, a Snapchat screenshot would surface in David's Discord showing him in blood-colored, stained gloves, pressing a finger to his lips in a shushing gesture. Following the alleged murder on April the 23rd, 2025, David's public life would continue as if nothing happened, but behind the scenes, prosecutors say his digital footprint began telling a far more disturbing story of trying to conceal the murder. By May the 1st, that pattern continued when records showed that he bought 2 chainsaws from Amazon, tools that investigators believed were intended for one gruesome purpose: the body.
You talked about a chainsaw months ago. You talked about finding a chainsaw months ago. Your reaction to this, does this confirm everything that you couldn't actually reveal at the time? Talk to us about it.
Yeah, it confirms some of it. You know, we didn't know everything. Let's be honest about that. But, you know, we did find a chainsaw. We knew that they were ordered in the name of this Victoria Mendez.
The ordering of these chainsaws was a strange decision that raised a few eyebrows once publicly disclosed, and even sparked rumors of an accomplice possibly helping David. Then on May the 5th, another package arrived at the Hollywood Hills home under the name Victoria Mendez. This time, the order contained a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and a blue inflatable kiddie pool. Prosecutors claimed that that pool became central in David's efforts to conceal evidence in the course of Celeste. They would allege that David placed Celeste's body inside of the inflatable pool to prevent her blood from spilling onto the garage floor. The autopsy would confirm that her arms and legs had been, with her arms below the elbows and her legs above the knees, and 2 further pieces. But even after that, the pool allegedly still left evidence behind, because forensics would later find small blue plastic fragments embedded in Celeste's wounded limbs, linking the body directly to the type of pool that David had ordered to his home.
We did previously report that blue plastic fragments were found in Celeste's wounds. Well, now we are learning from prosecutors that an expert was able to make a physical fit match from those blue fragments to that blue inflatable pool David allegedly had at his home.
Then came another detail that prosecutors say pointed directly at David. Celeste's left ring finger and pinky finger had been and have still to this day never been recovered. To prosecutors, the missing fingers were not random because Celeste's ring finger actually carried a red tattoo bearing David's name. Following the David allegedly placed her head and torso into the cadaver bag, sealed her limbs into a separate garbage bag, and loaded everything into the front trunk of his Tesla. This small compartment became the place where Celeste's remains would stay hidden for nearly 4 months.
The body being in the car for quite some time. I still think it's a little confusing about where the remains were when they were transported to the car. I mean, do you have a better idea?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think he stored them in the car. We heard from neighbors that the car started moving around the neighborhood starting in May. But you listen, it was nearby, and it was listen, I'm in search and rescue. I've dealt with a lot of deceased bodies. There's a very distinct smell that, especially if it was in the garage for a while. And that's where the other Tesla was being parked. It was going in and out of it. It was not being parked on the street. And they had like an arcade set up down there. I don't know how these people didn't know.
And during that time, prosecutors say that David lied to all of his friends and business associates about the smell of decay coming from his home and vehicle. That detail became even harder to ignore because David's garage was located right beneath his bathroom window. And in a resurfaced July 2025 livestream, David was in the bathroom with his friends Asia Collins, Neo Langston, and streamer Sakura Shimko when he abruptly apologized and joked about a foul smell in his house.
Oh yeah, I apologize in advance for the way my bathroom smelled. I took a
I don't care, I just took it.
Another one? That's what I'm talking about.
I had to go.
Meanwhile, location data suggested that he was still actively trying to dispose of evidence. On May the 8th, just 3 days after the alleged David reportedly returned late at night to the same remote area in Santa Barbara County, leaving his home at around 11:30 p.m. And then, on May the 31st, he allegedly made another documented trip to that same location. By July the 7th, prosecutors say his efforts to destroy evidence had entered another phase, because that day, David allegedly ordered a burn cage to his home, once again under the fake name Victoria Mendez. To investigators, the burn cage fit the very same pattern as the shovel, the chainsaws, the body bag, the pool, and the repeated trips to Santa Barbara County. It was another sign that prosecutors believe that David was trying to erase evidence. And eventually it would be that same area in Santa Barbara County that investigators would claim that a Caltrans maintenance worker actually found Celeste's passport card in a brushy area in January 2026. Finally, just before leaving Los Angeles for his Withered World tour in late July 2025, surveillance footage allegedly captured David parking the Tesla for the last time on Bluebird Avenue. And inside the front trunk was Celeste's remains, still hidden in that car, sat for days in the summer heat while David swanned off on tour. On July the 29th, 2025, rising musician David, real name David Anthony Burke, left Los Angeles to begin his Withered World tour. But before leaving, prosecutors now say surveillance footage captured David moving and parking his Tesla on Bluebird Avenue, just 400 feet from his Hollywood Hills home. And for the next 38 days, that Tesla would sit in the Los Angeles summer heat, while neighbors eventually begun to notice a smell that only disappeared after several parking tickets finally led to that Tesla being towed. Then, on September the 8th, 2025, 3 days after the vehicle was impounded, what looked like a routine tow job would suddenly take a horrific turn. When at the tow yard, the manager noticed the smell of decay and flies coming from the Tesla.
I love that this is not fazing you at all.
I found that singer who murdered his underage girlfriend's body like a month ago. Nothing fazed me after that.
Wow.
So he notified LAPD, who quickly determined that this car was indeed registered to David. When detectives opened the front trunk, they discovered a black cadaver bag covered in insects. And inside the bag, they would find the severely of Celeste, and beneath it, detectives found the second plastic garbage bag containing the arms and legs.
It was really terrible. She was partially liquefied, partially skeletonized. It was extensive maggot activity.
Investigators also found that Celeste's left eye was absent.
There were other things here, mutilation of that, and
the eye, did you see the eye was, does that tell you anything that that left eye was not present?
Terrible to think about, but the other eye was present, although liquefied, decomposed. Is there some way that that eye, that missing orbit, could have been so decomposed that it liquefied and drained away? I don't know.
While the ring and pinky fingers on her left hand had been and were missing from the vehicle. But even after the missing fingers, investigators found another mark that tied the case back to David, because Celeste had a red shush tattoo on the inside of her remaining right index finger that matched a tattoo that David had on the very same finger. For more than a week, the victim's identity remained unknown. Then, on September the 16th, 2025, the LA County Medical Examiner used dental records to confirm that the body belonged to 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The next day, on September 17th, investigators served a search warrant at David's Hollywood Hills rental home, and inside, prosecutors say the evidence quickly connected the Tesla back to the house.
A dozen LAPD investigators took a computer and other items from this Hollywood home just a block away from where an abandoned Tesla was found with a dead teenager in the trunk. Police spent hours at the home on Dehaney Place, placing several evidence bags into an SUV. Several homeowners say they remember seeing that distinct Tesla for a while. First parked in front of the house police searched today, then at 2 different spots on the street.
And using luminol, crime scene investigators searched floors, surfaces, and sink drains for traces of blood, and in the garage, bloodstains were later matched to Celeste's DNA. And detectives also reportedly recovered a blue inflatable pool from the property. According to forensic experts, blue plastic fragments from that pool were embedded in Celeste's remains, with these fragments physically matching cuts that were found on that same pool. Investigators also found a chainsaw and burn cage, which prosecutors linked to the and a possible plan to destroy evidence. Investigators also seized electronics and computers, while a private investigator later described other disturbing items in unopened packaging that seemed out of place inside a residential home. From there, detectives began working backwards, and according to the new court filing, the evidence didn't begin with David's Tesla. It stretched back for years. Authorities determined that David had apparently first met Celeste in January of 2022 when she was only 11 years old, and by November of 2023, when Celeste was and David was 18, prosecutors alleged that relationship and a pattern of had begun. Then, in early 2024, Celeste's family reported her missing twice to authorities in Lake Elsinore, roughly 90 minutes from David's home. At the time, missing posters stated that Celeste was last seen on February the 14th, with home surveillance reportedly capturing her leaving around 2 a.m. on Valentine's Day. After Celeste was reported missing, Lake Elsinore police identified David's phone number in her phone records, and when police contacted him on February the 17th, David claimed that he had last spoken with Celeste on February the 13th or 14th, while also claiming that he didn't know she was or that she had been reported missing. But perhaps not believing his story, that very same night, Lake Elsinore authorities contacted Los Angeles deputies to conduct a welfare check at David's home on North Doheny Place in West Hollywood. When deputies arrived around 8:15 p.m., they explicitly told David that Celeste was a 13-year-old runaway. Still, David again claimed that he didn't know she was and on top of that, he claimed that he had only met her once in person in November 2023, the very same month that prosecutors say the relationship begun. But according to prosecutors, that claim didn't line up with what investigators found, because while David had claimed that he didn't know her age, prosecutors say that he actually showed police a yearbook photo of Celeste he had on his phone, perhaps in an effort to prove that he thought she was older. Apparently during this time, members of David's management team were actually contacted by concerned citizens who shared the missing poster and requested that she be returned home. Furthermore, later DMs from David's friend Asia Collins would suggest that she too had been informed by a member of the public that Celeste was just 13 at the time, with her acknowledging that this was indeed David's girlfriend. 2 days after the welfare check, and after numerous people prying into the situation, Celeste was suddenly returned back home to her family in Lake Elsinore. And after she returned, her parents confiscated her phone in an effort to cut off communication. That's when prosecutors say David did something truly predatory, driving to Lake Elsinore and paying a junior high school student in Celeste's class $1,000 to deliver a burner phone that he had purchased for her so they could communicate behind her parents' back. And throughout 2024, prosecutors say that Celeste continued spending significant time with David, including weekends at his Hollywood Hills home and trips to Las Vegas and London and even Texas to meet his family. The filing also described text exchanges referencing and Plan B emergency contraceptives, along with photos that prosecutors say fully corroborated the relationship. By November 2024, prosecutors say that David and Celeste were no longer officially together, but the messages suggested that their relationship still continued. Then in March 2025, just 1 month before the alleged murder, investigators recovered an iCloud message that prosecutors say showed that David was still manipulating Celeste. In one text from her that they wrote, Celeste had apparently said to David, "All we do is have and just hang out. Man, I just want more than that for myself." By the time detectives pieced the timeline together, the body in the Tesla was no longer the most damning piece of evidence against David. It was just the final resting place for a victim of a much larger murder conspiracy. Now, the case moves forward in court. David Anthony Burke has pleaded not guilty to the charges against him, and his defense still maintains that he did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, but prosecutors say that the evidence tells a very different story. They've got a mountain of evidence, phone records, GPS data, purchases, deliveries, forensic testing, and the remains found inside that Tesla. The next next major step is a preliminary hearing that's now scheduled for May 26th, 2026, where a judge will decide whether the evidence is strong enough for the case to move forward to trial. But once it does go to trial, if convicted, David could be facing life in prison without the possibility of parole, or perhaps even the death penalty, depending on how serious prosecutors decide to make things. But beyond the filings, the hearings, and the evidence, the most important thing about this case is Celeste, the 14-year-old girl whose life was stolen away from her. The girl whose story was hidden for months, and whose name truly deserves to be remembered for far more than the way she was found. So as this case continues, my hope is simple: that the truth finally comes out fully, and that anyone proven to have harmed, enabled, or covered up what happened to Celeste is finally held accountable in a court of law. And that in the end is all we're asking for, and that's why we're keeping her name alive. Justice for Celeste. Rest in peace.